You stand at the crossroads of your life, watching the winds of fate blow with cruel indifference. The world offers its applause to those who win, but there is something hollow in that praise when it is handed to you because of others, not because of your own strength. You know the truth. In this life, the greatest victories are the ones you achieve alone. The world will not always be there to hold your hand, to lift you when you fall, or to cheer for you when you succeed. I have seen countless souls arrive at my door, some carrying the weight of dependence, others the weight of regret. Some spent their lives begging for support from friends, family, or society, believing that their success would never be possible without external help. But what I've witnessed, as I walked through the realm of life and death, is that those who are truly free, the ones who carve their names in the annals of history, are those who refuse to beg. They win, not because others believed in them, but because they believed in themselves, because they found their own strength in the face of overwhelming odds. So I offer you this: the 7 reasons why you should never beg for support, but instead find it within yourself to win without it. The illusion of dependence. There was once a young man who lived his life in search of validation. Every step he took, every decision he made, was colored by the opinions of others. He asked for advice from his friends, sought approval from his parents, and worked tirelessly to meet the expectations of his peers. He believed that if only the world would support him, he would be successful. But one day he encountered failure, devastating, crushing failure. In that moment, when no one came to his aid, he realized the cruel truth. His success was never his own. It had been built on the false hope that others would carry him when he faltered. Without them, he was nothing. I watched as he fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of his dependence. He begged for help, but the world was silent. The support he had so desperately sought had disappeared, and he was left with nothing but his own despair. But what if he had never depended on others? What if he had believed in himself instead of looking for external validation? Would his fall have been less painful if he had learned to stand alone? To survive and to thrive, you must realize that dependence is an illusion. The world will not always be there to catch you when you fall. The sooner you learn to rely on yourself, the sooner you will become the architect of your own destiny. The power of self-reliance. There was a woman who dreamt of becoming an artist, but her dream was never realized. Why? Because she spent years waiting for approval, waiting for her friends to tell her that her work was good enough, waiting for her family to believe in her potential, waiting for society to value her talent. But the approval never came, and each day she watched as the fire in her heart slowly dimmed. One day she realized something. She had been waiting for permission to live her dream. She had placed her success in the hands of others, believing that only when they supported her would she be allowed to pursue her passion. I spoke to her then, urging her to take control of her fate. The power of self-reliance is the greatest gift you can give yourself, I told her. Success is not given by others. It is taken by those who have the courage to act, regardless of external validation. That day, she stopped waiting. She picked up her paintbrush, and for the first time in years, she painted for herself, not for others, not for their approval, but for her own soul. To win without begging for support, you must cultivate self-reliance. You will never be able to control how others view you, but you can control the fire that burns within you. Don't wait for permission. Act. The courage to stand alone. A man once sought to change the world with his vision. He had a dream, a powerful one, but those around him ridiculed him. His friends laughed, his family doubted him, and his peers told him he was foolish. Desperation began to creep into his heart, and soon he found himself begging for support from others, asking them to believe in his vision so that he could finally make it a reality. One night, while sitting in the dark, I spoke to him. "You ask for their approval, but what if you stood alone? What if you didn't need anyone's validation?" He looked at me with confusion. "But how can I do this without help?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "The greatest achievements," I told him, "are those that are done in solitude. When you stop begging for others to believe in you, you find the strength to believe in yourself. You will never change the world if you are waiting for others to support you. The world is changed by those who do not need others to tell them they can succeed. They simply act, despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the isolation." He took those words to heart, and from that day on, he no longer sought validation from others. He moved forward with his vision, alone but unafraid. In time, he found the support he needed, not from others, but from the power of his own will. To win, you must have the courage to stand alone. You will never achieve greatness by waiting for others to approve of your path. The true power lies in your willingness to walk it alone, without looking over your shoulder to see who follows. The strength gained from overcoming isolation. A woman found herself constantly surrounded by people, but she was deeply lonely. She craved emotional support, companionship, and validation. Yet each time she reached out for comfort, the response was lackluster, and she felt even more isolated. Her loneliness became her prison, and she began to beg for someone to understand, beg for someone to help her carry the burden of her life. But one day I spoke to her. "Do you not see? Your loneliness is a gift. It is in the solitude that you will find your true strength. If you keep begging for support, you will remain trapped in this cycle. But if you embrace the silence, you will find that you are enough." She hesitated, but in time she began to understand. She stopped reaching outward and instead began to explore the vast world within herself. In her solitude, she found strength, and in that strength, she built her life, not dependent on the support of others, but on the unshakable foundation of her own self-sufficiency. True strength is forged in the furnace of isolation. It is in those moments of solitude, when you can no longer rely on others, that you discover your own resilience. The failure of external validation. A man was once celebrated for his success, but his victory was hollow. He had built his empire not on his own merit, but by constantly seeking the approval of others. He had crafted his image based on the expectations of those around him, and his success was nothing more than a performance for their benefit. But when the applause stopped, when the cheers turned to silence, he was left with nothing. The world had moved on, and so had his worth. "You see," I told him, "the truth is this: when you live for the validation of others, you will never truly win. Their praise is fleeting. It is an empty vessel that cannot sustain you." He began to understand that the victories he had won were not his own. They were built on the fragile foundation of external validation. He needed to learn to win without seeking approval. Only then would his success be meaningful. To win without begging for support, you must stop seeking external validation. The world will give you praise, but it will not define your worth. Your success must come from within, from your own belief in your abilities. The freedom of self-determination. A young woman spent years waiting for someone to tell her what to do, to guide her in the direction she should take. She could never make a decision without seeking the approval of others. And when she failed, she would turn to them for comfort, for the assurance that it wasn't her fault. But one day I spoke to her. "You do not need others to determine your path. The only person who can control your destiny is you. The moment you stop begging for support is the moment you free yourself from the shackles of others' expectations. It was a difficult lesson, but she began to understand. She started to make decisions based on her own intuition, her own desires, not on the desires of others. Slowly, she found her confidence, her independence, and her true calling. Freedom comes when you stop seeking permission. Your destiny is yours to create, and it can only be shaped by your own hands. The unyielding force of inner strength. The final lesson is this: you already have the strength you seek. Every victory you achieve, every triumph you experience, is not the result of others lifting you up. It is the result of your own resilience, your own will, your own strength. Do not beg for support. Do not wait for others to tell you that you are worthy of success. You are already worthy. You are already powerful. The moment you stop waiting for others to believe in you is the moment you will truly understand your own power. When you stop begging for support, you will discover that you can win without them. You will realize that you do not need anyone's approval, anyone's help, or anyone's validation. You have everything you need within yourself to succeed. The path of the independent soul. The road to victory is often lonely, and the world will not always give you the support you think you need. But in that solitude lies the true power, the power to create, to overcome, to triumph. Stop begging for support. Stand tall, walk the path alone, and you will discover that you are more than enough to win. The world may offer you its help, but it is in your own hands that true strength resides.